We are a week away from training camp starting next week. And you're going to be there probably every day you're allowed to be there. It's going to be one of the most paid attention to training camps in a long time for the Eagles, I really think, because of how the collapse happened last year. So my first question for you is when you get there, I don't know what the first practice is or the first day that you'll be there meeting with guys. The first day you're there watching a practice, who are your eyes going to be on the most the first day and why?
For me, it's Nick Sirianni because I just want to see how he handles him being himself in that new role as a CEO. If I had to guess, it may be probably the same where he's overlooking everything and he just goes from position to position. But I want to see how much he really veers off and goes towards, say the defense, how much time he spends there, how much like that. And I also want to see how his practices are structured. In the last 2 years, they have gotten off to good starts, but we saw what the ending were. And I mean, finished was at 10-1 last year, and then you went on a run in 2022. So it'll be interesting to see how much he veers away from that and how much it affects the start, and also how much the players communicate with him. Like how much is the leadership, how much they're tuned into him. From what we got from OTAs and also in mini camp, it seemed like they're still tuned to him. They were defending him, still defending him, and everything else. So I want to see that carries on and going on from there.
Okay. I mean I was expecting you to mention a player. I love the
Oh,
fact
I'm
that
sorry.
no,
Saquon's another one
no,
too.
no, no.
Yeah.
I love that you put the Sirianni thing in. And on Friday, I have a guest coming on who's a former, independent league coach and coached overseas a little bit, and he's an agent now for players. And I'm going to ask him that same question. Like you, as a guy that's watched a lot of football and covered a lot of football, you're going to be watching him. Are you confident that he can handle this? I hate using the word demotion, but change in role. Are you confident he can handle that?
I think so. I mean, when I look at
That doesn't
everything
sound
that
very confident. I
yeah,
think does not sound confident.
it's almost with the unknown when I look at it things like it really. I think it really matters how much he gets his message across and changes it up because you're at the time now when you're coaching. You've been there for a little bit, and guys start to know your message. It's about keeping that message fresh because if you start to lose it, if you don't do that, guys turn out okay. Well, we know we're going to hear core value, or we hear whatever is going to happen. So I just want to see message wise. I want to see what he does. That's a little bit in terms that's going to be a little bit different as well too.
We'll get to see to Saquon Barkley in a second because obviously he's a hot name to talk about. But those coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, maybe from the mini camps and stuff like that, when you've seen this team together this offseason, thoughts on what you've seen from both of those guys right now on each side of the ball?
Well, one thing I think I'll start defensively because that's for lack of better words, towards the end of that was just a dumpster fire when it came to Matt Patricia in terms of when he was basically trying to force his defensive style onto a team that wasn't A equipped and B was playing another style in mid-season. It just didn't. It was just messed up, for lack of better words. I look at Vic Fangio. I look at the way he's utilizing that secondary in terms of making it's positioned this in a way and the
Mhm.
way his schemes and coverages, and now you have athletes on that side of the ball, and you're deep. And, I mean, I don't remember the last time you look at this team. Maybe it's been a little bit that you actually saw 20 defensive backs on his roster, and you can legitimately make a case, whether it be for defensive coverage or for special teams, for about 15 or 16 of them to
Mhm.
make this team. So I think they're really deep on that side. And the only thing I want to see, and I think we'll get a better sense for it, is how he schemes his stunts and everything when they start going 1-on-one against the offensive line. So I'm looking for that. Offensively with Kellen Moore, there's been some wrinkles. There definitely has been some changes in terms of what they're doing. I know all the talk's been a little emotion and everything else like that, and it's a big part key because what we saw during those 707s and in the few 11-on-11s, which basically was 7-7, which just the lineman standing up going, "Hi, how you doing?" To the other defensive lineman. But what I saw in there, like I like the way that he was getting the matchups that he wanted against those secondary guys as well too, and the use of the bunch formations too, the way that they can basically they basically make a mirror image like, okay, you're gonna try to match up everybody. You'd have AJ Brown on one side, 1-on-1. Meanwhile, you got to figure out between three defenders, okay, who's got AJ Brown, Paris Campbell, John Ross, or sometimes Saquon Barkley in the middle of that too. So I like the way he's trying to create these matchups for these guys, and I think you'll see a lot better start in terms of flow and the way the things look schematically. It may take a little bit for them to get the verbiage down, but I think
Mhm.
overall, once they get used to that, they'll start to let the athleticism take over and be good from there.
You mentioned the verbiage and all the changes and all, and Jalen Hurts mentioned it was so new 90. What do you use? 95% new offense, basically. Um, is Kellen Moore's offense simple enough that they could figure this out? We had a Cowboys fan, come in the comments every so often on this show, and he's scared for Eagles fans because he claims all Kellen Moore does is run curl routes. Just like all we did was bubble screens and we hated them. They're scarred with curl routes and all. Do you think Jalen Hurts can handle learning this enough that, in my opinion, the start of the schedule is a little tougher than the second half of the schedule? Can he learn enough of it to be successful early in the season like he has been in the past?
I think it's gonna be, so I think it'll be adjustment. I think we've seen that beforehand whenever he's in any new system in terms of that. And one thing I think is I think he'll be able to change and adapt to it. I mean, he's been through, it's not like with him changing offensive coordinators, almost like changing sheets on the bench. Like it's almost like a habit every time. It's like, all right, great, here we go. New offensive coordinator. All right, what's the system? You just hope that he doesn't take what he's learned and then goes back to say whatever Moore is teaching them, and he goes back to what Johnson said, some a similar term, and go from there. And from what I've heard in terms of the system and everything, even when it comes down to play calling, it's a little easier because it helps because Moore was a former quarterback. So you see that.
Mhm.
In terms of the whole curl route, all he runs curl, I think that's something to watch. Because it goes in hand with what when they say Devontae, like how much freedom they have in this offense now. A
Mhm.
lot of it's all option routes, and the
Mhm.
way that if you get a good defensive coordinator to really start to influence them and play mindfully, he's like, okay, yeah, we're going to make sure that we're not going to let you be deep, so we're going to take away if there's a go route or tagged on a certain coverage. Well, all right, we're going to say that, so they have to cut it off and do a stop route or a slant, take a defense. I just hope the one thing I really think you see more in the more offense that I hope that Jalen Hurts really takes advantage of is the running backs into the slot area, and also I hope he takes advantage of Dallas Goedert. I think Dallas Goedert could really have a big year in terms of his production, what he can do in this system.
Wrong. Dallas Goedert's got to stay healthy. So
That's a
he's
big
one of
thing
my
too.
guys that I have. He gets Joel. So many people in Philadelphia, Joel Embiid, others, they're always hurt and they get criticized for it. Dallas Goedert never gets criticized about the fact that he's never healthy. I mean, he's missed a lot of time over the last 3-4 years. Back to the running back though, Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, I don't even think Philadelphia Eagles fans realize the impact that Saquon Barkley is going to have, and not just because he's a great player, but I kind of feel like after watching all these clips from Hard Knocks, Saquon Barkley's got to have a massive, massive chip on his shoulder to just prove that the Giants made because I don't think he wanted to leave New York. I really truly believe he wanted to stay and be a Giant for life. Like, there's got to be a massive chip on his shoulder there.
Well, I've been loving this Hard Knock series more and more just to see the
The
mind of
first
some of
time
these
I've
people
watched
written
it
for
in years.
it. It is interesting, and I love, especially that first episode we saw them talk about DeAndre Swift. Well, if you bring him, you're going to have to bring another back. All little nuggets like that.
Mhm.
But the one thing I think is that I think when you look at the overall impact he could have, I mean, on this offense, and I know it's used a lot more in basketball. When you look at the top term gravity, AJ Brown has gravity. If he goes somewhere, he's going to bring a couple eyes with him. I think when you have Saquon Barkley out, he brings even more of a gravity just because of his position and style, but how well he does things. So now when teams were playing that deep cover like cover four and everything, trying to not let the Eagles wide receivers do that. Can't do it, or there's too high safeties. You can't do that now because Saquon Barkley can really run up the yards if you do that. So now you got to bring that safety down. All of a sudden, that just opens up the fact that he's even on the field can open up so much opportunities for other aspects of the offense. And oh yeah, when he gets the ball, he has the threat to do that as well too. I think behind this line, even with the questions with Steen or what have you, right guard. I think behind his line, he can average 4 or 5 yards a carry at a minimum. So I think he can do really good. So overall, he's a big impact. And I know everybody says Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey. I don't think he put up Christian McCaffrey numbers, but I think he have a Christian McCaffrey impact in that sort of way.
Yeah, I think that's
Which
very key
everything
that
else.
people phrase it that way. It's the Christian McCaffrey impact, not the numbers, because you still have
Right.
AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and whatnot. But even last year, the last 2 years, honestly, with Miles Sanders in 22 and last year with Swift, our running backs put up great numbers behind this offensive line, but there still was always this philosophy of mixing in Gainwell, mixing in Boston Scott, obviously getting the wide receivers involved. AJ Brown has had an insane amount of yards. Do you think that they will go away from that rotation and really lean heavily as Saquon Barkley as the number one guy, clear cut? No, we're not going to be sitting here. Why did Kenny Gainwell have 12 rushes to Saquon's 13 in the game? Is that even a chance that continues to happen this year?
I think the only chance that happens is they're up by like 40, and it's like, okay, you
Okay.
know what? Like 2022, they're up by 30, 40, and like, okay, let's get Kenny out there. We don't want to
Mhm.
risk it on that one too.
Yeah.
I think you'll still see a lot of. I think you'll still see a decent amount of game will, but nothing to the point. I think if I had to put a percentage on it, I think you see Saquon gets about 75% of the carries, and then from there you get Gainwell. You to expel him when Saquon needs a rest, and then Shipley would probably take the Boston Scott role more of last year as opposed to the year before that. So I think when you look at everything else, yeah, this is mainly Saquon's role because the benefit was you brought Gainwell back in because you thought he'd be the receiving threat on third downs and passing downs, where you got that in Barkley. When you look at the pass blocking, Barkley is the best pass blocker among the running backs, so you don't have to worry about that aspect in terms of protecting Hurts. So overall, you sign Saquon Barkley all this money, you need to be that
Mhm.
80%, 75, 80% carry or workload and to protect Hurts as well too on the blind side and be a receiver.
Yep. You mentioned Tyler Steen a few moments ago, talking about blocking for Saquon, and we had a big conversation on this show about a week and a half ago. One of my things that I'm keeping an eye on is not just Tyler Steen, but also Cam Jurgens, that center right guard position. Cam Jurgens was a very good right guard. They slid him over where he was drafted to be to center. Everyone's concerned about Tyler Steen, and I'm more concerned about Cam Jurgens because it's a lot harder to replace one of the greatest centers of all time that literally was the quarterback of that offensive line. You know, I know he's been trained by Jason Kelsey versus Tyler Steen at right guard, who, I mean, he hasn't had much experience, but again, he was drafted for that spot anyway. You know, I'm more concerned. I'm going to be watching both a lot, you know, throughout camp and all the reports on them. Do you have any concerns about Cam Jurgens filling in for Jason Kelsey and taking over that role? Because to me, that Jason Kelsey did a lot, the blitz pickups, everything, and it scares me a little bit that there's going to be some rough patches early on in the season.
I think that's the main thing when you mentioned the butt pickups. I think overall just adjusting because the main thing with Kelsey is athletically, they're not. I think they're both around the same time right now. What you saw with Kelsey last year to see where Cam is this year, I think they're athletically they're going to be about the same, and you'll see a lot of that if they run screens or what have you, like running that zone running back running a scheme. But when you look at the way that Kelsey, big difference is Kelsey's been around the league so long, he started to see different variations of fronts.
Mhm.
So you can call it out right away. Cam may have seen it in terms of watching it on film or tape, but that's a whole different level. From up top, it looks different as opposed to when you got all this different things in front of you, and all of a sudden you may not have the same sight line as you look around. And defensive coordinators are going to test them with that early. Especially the biggest game I think that will pacify things. I know it's 3 games into the season is that Dennis Allen and the Saints are going to really
Mhm.
test him. He's one of the better defensive coordinators in the league, defensive minds in the league. That's where you have to know, like, okay, where's Cam at? That's the true litmus test. But
I think that's great.
that's the concern I have when it comes to Cam, though.
See, and you know the thing I keep talking and thinking about is the fact that you know Cam Jurgens had a really good season as a right guard, but he had Lane Johnson on one side and he had Jason Kelsey on the other. Kind of helped. You know, Kelsey could call it out instantly, like you said, but he can also help coach. You know, Cam Jurgens at right guard. Cam Jurgens isn't going to be able to help coach Tyler Steen on the field at right guard because he's going to still be learning on the fly, so to speak, on all the things you talk about. And I still say that little section of that offensive line, offensively speaking, it's my biggest question mark right now.
It is, and you have to hope that Steen really learned that, like, because with Stoutland, everybody knows, like, okay, you got the five, as Miles said, 5-wheel drive. A lot of it, the whole system is all about blocking angles, and we saw he struggled with that last year in that one start he made against the Cowboys. The main thing you hope is that he learned what angles are like, and it's tough to tell from when we saw him on the field this year, but it looks like he got a little better in terms of that. I want to see when he goes against live action, and I think we'll get a good sense of that early on during training camp and seeing where he is because given all the other pieces that you have, he probably is on a shorter release than what if it was another year,
Mm-hmm.
because what have you. So that's why I think that's why Matt Hennessy is on his team. That's why Mekhi Becton was his team because if it starts out looking really bad early, that gives them enough time to insert one of those other guys to the starting lineup by the time the Packers game begins. But I think personally, I think just looking at the way that he's developing that aspect and talking to some people, I think he'll be at least serviceable, at least beginning the start of the season.
Duck is asking a question. Did you see was Kelsey around during mini camps at all? Do you expect him to be hanging around at training camp much this year, or is he completely off campus? As
When we
Duck
talked
said.
When we talked to Kelsey during his event, he says there here in Atlanta. We didn't see him personally, like
Mhm.
we like there, but he's been around that facility a lot. Especially he said he was there, especially early on. He's in that one too. I mean, we heard the story about Dylan McMahon, how he met him. He like as a scene and just ran, hey, you're a rookie. Also, you see your boss, General Manager Howie Roseman, all of a sudden talking to Jason Kelsey, the guy you could potentially play the position he did, and he got all stuff for saying that. So we didn't personally see him in there, so he maybe probably kept trying to keep an eye, but he said to himself he was there early on in OTAs and he was around there just to look as well too. And he's given his number. We know he's Cam Jurgens has a number, and no Bill McMahon has his number to call out, so he can be a de facto coach even if he's still doing the broadcasting stuff.
Yeah, because didn't I read that he's losing a lot of weight and stuff? So there's no
Oh, he
chance
looks
that
ten.
Kelsey's going to unretire. So he's lost. I want to know what his secret is to lose weight personally.
When you look at Fletcher, especially him and Fletcher Cox, when you look at them now, it's like you guys play football like we if you saw them in there like our size now as much because they don't have to do the lifting, they don't have to do the intense meal plans or anything else. It's just like, oh, stop playing football, okay, done. It's like it's crazy how quick it goes.
All right, real quick, back to the defensive side of the ball because you mentioned the cornerbacks and how deep they are. And I think that honestly, player or positional watch, I kind of feel like cornerback is going to be one of the most exciting things to watch this camp because first off, how bad it was last year to play a cornerback to this year. Obviously, Howie Roseman put a huge investment on my Twitter page. I got a poll going right now. It's not even like 20 hours old yet, so we still got a couple days. We're about 160, 170 votes in, and it's who is going to be the starting cornerback opposite of Darius Slay? I put Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Isaiah Rodgers, and other. Right now, Cooper DeJean is, or not Cooper DeJean, Isaiah, can't get it out right. Quinion Mitchell is dominating the poll. Next, Isaiah Rodgers, and other third with Keely Ringo is the third most popular choice. Nobody thinks DeJean has a chance to start, which I get. Nobody thinks James Bradbury is going to be on this team week one. Is it to me, Quinn? Oh, I love that answer. Without answering, I love that answer because I actually agree that maybe James Bradbury should be on this team. But you don't draft Quinion Mitchell in the first round where you drafted him if you don't plan on starting him. And everyone's like, he needs time. And I don't know if you draft him in that spot and give him time. Do you think he's the front runner going into camp? And who do you think could supplant him in that spot?
I think honestly right now I think it's Rodgers and Ringo on the outside to start, and you do
Okay.
see like a little bit Cooper's more of your inside he plays more of the I don't want to say the star safety, the star position, like playing around the line or nickel is. I think he look at that. But yeah, I think it. I know people like want to see like you use a first round pick on it. He still has a little work to do. I mean, there's
Okay.
times when we saw him, we got beat off the line once, and he has. I will say this: he has really great closing speed. If he gets beat, he can make it up quickly. So there's no problem with that. But there's still technical things he needs to work on, and that's okay because he's a rookie. I know people like okay, you have to draft first round. We want to see him immediately. But I think through some of these other moves that they made, they've allowed themselves to get that, and they can sprinkle them in a little bit more. Maybe use them in certain situations in dime that you use them there. Maybe use them in quarters in certain situations. And we have seen because as when we first talked to Vic Fangio in May before or during minicamp and during OTAs, he was like, "Oh, we want to put him exclusively on the outside." And say that well, there was a play. There was a play that we saw him running like around like the nickel slash linebacker role. So they're going to find ways to get him on the field. And it may not just be on the outside, but looking at the way that Keely Ringo played and the physicality that he showed, he's fixed. The one thing I was always worried about him is real physical defensive back. He's really great, but you're worried about like say all the illegal contacts downfield. That he's fixed a lot of that. The way that battle between AJ Brown and Keely Ringo during those 707s was it was must watch. It really was a lot of fun to see it. And then you saw Isaiah Rodgers. You see his ability to jump the routes. You see his quickest abilities and what he can do. So I think right now we're really looking at now a 2-man race for that starting outside job, and then maybe Bradbury's more your safety slash inside guy as well too. Like I think some of these guys that are playing corner right now may see a little bit of safety as well too, just because of the way they said all interchangeable. So there's a
I
lot
want
of
you to
different ways
explain
to
this
go.
because you gave us a non-answer when I mentioned James Bradbury's name and you mentioned it again there. I've been saying it since day one. It makes more sense to keep him because if you cut him today or you cut him August 30th, you're having the same dead cap hit either way. It makes more sense to at least keep him at the start of camp, midway through camp. Maybe another team has an injury. You get a Sam Bradford type overpay trade. or he learns safety, he's depth, he's experience. I still say he's not as great as the All Pro 2022 season, but he's not as bad as he was last year. There's somewhere in the middle, and you have a lot of youth on this secondary. There's literally no harm in having him around right now, right?
There's two reasons why I think he'd still be a good fit, and B, why I think they may still keep him as well. Main thing is schematically. Excuse me. When you look at the way that Vangio in the past has used his corners or the way the system, especially that cover six, is usually all the by like quarter, half in the back end. The one thing that James Bradbury does very well is play in zone coverage because it allows him to be off, it allows him to see what's in front of him, and allows him to jump the routes and get pass deflections. That's what he did really well in 2022. And in times when before he really went in that slide when Patricia took over and say, "No, you're playing more man." That's what he played in 2023. In 2023, I thought they should have kept him more in that zone, but we all know what happened, and yeah, especially Seattle. We saw what the result and stuff like that is. But and also the other way as well too, like you mentioned, like the cap hit is not is if you're going to cut him and everything else, you might as well if you're going to cut him, you might as well use the knowledge that he has in terms of this as well too. And also this system, you need a lot of communication, you need a lot of play recognition, and knowing what the rules are, and it's really lends itself to more veterans playing in this scheme. That's another reason why I think Mitchell and even sometimes maybe a little bit Dejean may need to be worked in a little bit more as well too. There's got a lot of talent, but it's a pretty it can be a complex system at times too in terms of passing off underneath and the different rules and stuff like that. So coupling all that together, I think Bradbury still has value in terms of this team and could be a. I'm not saying he's going to be all pro Bradbury, although history says every other year he's really good. So maybe that comes in, but yeah, I think he can still be a decent contributor to this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. Who's going to be the odd man out then? If it's not Bradbury, I still think Bradbury's got to fight for that spot. I think Avante Maddox, if it wasn't for the fact that he's got safety experience, could be an odd man out. Zach McPherson, I haven't even heard any update to how his recovery from his injury is going. I didn't hear his name once mentioned from a single Eagles reporter during the mini camp. So who's the odd man out? Is it Josh Joby? Is it Eli Ricks? Who's the odd man out?
If I had to go one person, I think Ricks is a guy that I could see in a player for player trade or out or release, and they try to put him on the practice squad. But good luck because everybody knows he's a young corner who has some upside on there. And the reason why that is, we're going to see it play out and everything in special teams because you look at McPherson, who I had a chance to talk to him a couple weeks ago, and he's full 100% go, and he's got that position versatility because not only do he play outside, he can play in the slot. So you got that as well, go too. But you look at him and Joe being the gunners on the outside. Yeah, I think that especially with not only gunners but also that new kickoff coverage rule. That's going to the kickoff rule. That's going to play in effect because the guys who are quick off the line and can beat their one man, basically you're in the backfield. You're direct line of sight for the kick returner. So I think that plays into a role into it as well too. And with Ricks, it's not so much as like he's primarily. I know he played the slot, but he plays a lot better on the outside, and he's got and special teams wise is not as good as Job and McPherson. So yeah, it's tough, and I wouldn't be surprised. And the one thing is going to watch is because of all these competitions. What are they going? Where are the Eagles going to go short at? Offensive line they usually keep 9 or 10, so they're not going to cut short. Maybe they go lighter at off the ball linebacker. Maybe they go lighter at well, not edge rusher because they need everybody they can get on that side. But other positions you can look like it's like maybe they go with five, maybe they go with say it's a start with maybe they go with two quarterbacks and then maybe say hope Tanner McKee flows through that. There's so many options they can do. But they're so deep in that they don't want to lose anybody. We even talk about. Yeah, I know this is going to sound like a reach and everything else, but Sean Stevens might be a player who flashes. He's not going to make the roster, but he's the type of guy that's going to flash and Tyler Hall, I didn't even talk about him. There's so many guys that are a flash, and you're like, you gotta keep these guys, and you're just looking like, where's the room going to be? It's going to be. It's a very tough decision for Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, and the rest of the front office and coaching staff this year.
Guys, we're talking to Chris Franklin, NJ.com, Eagles beat reporter. One final question, one final real big question here with the Eagles. We saw from off-season camps and the having a mandatory camp. Nick Sirianni said, he's doing things more serious. He's making some changes, wants to work on the details, and doesn't want last year to happen again. And we see that by the first time him ever having a mandatory mini camp. Do you expect Nick Sirianni to change things up in training camp at all? I'm not saying he's going to go to 2-a-day practices like Buddy Ryan did back in the day, but do you expect a different tone and a different format to what he does? Do you expect him to maybe give some of the starters some preseason game reps to kind of hone down that we're serious this time, or do you think the rest of this offseason, the rest of camp is going to be just like it's always been for under Nick Sirianni?
I think we may see a series from the starters in the first game
Mm-hmm.
against the Ravens just to get that because they'll need a ramp up because that that Brazil game, that travel, and it's that weird balance of trying to give him rest because they know he got that that intense travel schedule early in the season, including Brazil, versus also trying to get them as amazing reps with two new coordinators as well too. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the starters get like a series, maybe two, depending on how well they do against the Ravens. Then we know they have those joint practices. I think they'll treat those as the games and maybe give those guys a rest that week. But I would be surprised if, hey, that final preseason week against the Vikings, maybe you give them another like a series, let them rest, and then you go from there. So I think that's going to be the biggest change in there. In terms of say practice time and everything, the way that they run these guys and there's always something going on for them, so they're not standing around almost you have to say Chip Kelly ish in the way of how he just something was always going on, nobody's not wasting time. That always happens around his practice, so I think you'll see that continue. So they don't need to necessarily say, "Hey, let's make it all." They color code their practices. Like red day is like a real light day, green day is full go, something like that. I don't think you'll see more green days. Maybe see a couple more yellow instead of red. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
40, maybe it's 50 minutes instead of 45, stuff like that, but nothing that's going to be too intensive because I mentioned earlier, they still view it as, hey, they've gotten off to good starts in each of the last 2 years. They think that's part of the reason why they're not running everybody through in training camp. So I think those will be the main changes I
So
think you'll see.
then what's the difference that Nick Sirianni's got to do if it's not? So they've had these great starts, but last year it didn't sustain itself. What does Nick Sirianni need to do throughout the season then to not let that you know dip happen or that fall off happen? Like he's got to change something somewhere in his philosophies to not let that kind of fall off happen.
I think two of the things happened already with these veteran coordinators in there because I
Yeah.
mean there was the report that was out there, showing the side basically was holding the classroom in there saying, well, what do you guys think? Should we do this? And you maybe should this and sit and think like philosophize stuff like that. Stuff like that I think was key because then after a while I think they were personally I think is that they started losing confidence a little bit like, oh, this guy doesn't know as much as he does, stuff like that. So I think that played a role and then you started getting that doubt and it started rolling and then they hit that patch and just snowballs and it just went back that way too. So I think that was key thing because you had two new coordinators and they were trying to get a feel for those well too, and they were young, they weren't experienced. Now you got two guys that come with certain sort of pedigree. I think that helps out a lot, so that way you don't have to worry about it going that way too. So you'll see that, and also
Yeah.
we know it's not going to be so like that because you still got Fangio because you can see him in his little grumble going, "It's too late. I don't want to do this anymore." Like the Belichick, he's getting that way too. So you'll see that stuff. Trust me, it won't be like it won't be a pacifist training camp, but it won't be so much as like, wow, you getting thoughts of Lehigh happening again.
I I miss the good old days of Lehigh. Is Nick Sirianni on the hot seat at all in your opinion? Because I know a lot of people are talking that he's got a very short leash. You've got Kellen Moore, who is going to be a head coach next year somewhere, in my opinion. Whether it's here taking over for Nick Sirianni in a collapse, or we have a great season, he gets a job somewhere else. Where's your opinion on his hot seat right now?
I think it's very warm in terms of if the, I'll put it this way. If they start out 2-5, 2-6, yeah, I think with the talent they have on his team, maybe you see a change, something like that. But as long as they're competitive in the division wise, basically as long as they're competitive the rest of the season and they get beyond they make at least a divisional round. I say the goal for him, especially with his talent, especially the NFC, he needs to get to the NFC Championship game
Agreed.
because, especially with the one seed, because I think that the 49ers and the Lions are their two threats. The Cowboys basically didn't do anything. I think we've done more, had more action than their offseason. So those are the two teams you want to see. And I think even when you match them up, the team that scares me more legit. I know everybody said the 49ers got everything like that and Brock Purdy, everything else. I look at the Lions, they're young in that running game and that's the thing that could really, I think, when you match them up against the Eagles, that could really be the difference. And I think they could have a slight edge right now. So you get them. I think if you get to that, you should be able to get the NFC Championship game, but at least the divisional round. If he doesn't get that, then that's why I start thinking you see the calls for him to potentially looking on or you also got to look at the injuries too, like what happens. So there's a lot of things, variables going on. But if they start 2-5, 2-6, yeah, I think they could potentially make a move.
Well, we start the season in Green Bay or against Green Bay in Brazil. Did you get your ticket and your passport ready yet? Are you going down?
Still,
Did NJ.com give you that budget to go down there?
I'm
'Cause
still
I
waiting to
think I
hear.
asked you that the last time you were on the show, and you didn't know if you were getting that approval or not.
I'm still waiting to hear. Is that for two? Because it's like too. August 2nd, we know that's a little behind the scenes thing. August 2nd is when the deadline for all the credentials for all media to go to find out. So when I get back, I wonder if I get like, hey, that next Monday or Monday, like, hey, you're going. All right, cool. And then you see also the green and yellow start trying to learn Portuguese. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Obrigado, thank you, all stuff like that.
I just see Chris Franklin out in the town in Brazil. It's a party city, from what I understand, man. I just think Chris Franklin would have a good time partying up in Brazil.
That's a dangerous thing. That's a very dangerous. But the thing, and I'm glad when they put it in, like for reference, like where the media hotel is, it's almost like the Concha Hawk. It's like where Concha Hawk, and then you have to go into downtown. That's where it's like for us right now. And traffic, from everything I've read and heard, is very, very bad. So it's almost like going. It's basically like going to a school. So I got experience with that, man. But so I might as well do that. It's like a school on a Saturday afternoon, zoo traffic and everything else. So yeah, I'll be used to it.
All right. Well, make sure everybody that's watching this, you follow my man Chris Franklin at C Franklin News. I always say it, and it's not just because you come on my show frequently, but between you and a couple other guys. I mean, I don't turn notifications on, but during camps, I turn yours and one other person's on, and that's it. And I
Thank you.
just get all the reports from camp. I love the vid. Now that in this day and age, getting the cell phone camera, videos from camp, I love it. I eat that stuff up. So if anything, just do more for me because I
Uh,
love those things and I love seeing them and I love overreacting to every single one of them that you post, man. One of the best in the business right here.
I appreciate upgraded it too. So it's right. It's
Ooh,
I've been testing some stuff out during this vacation. So I'm
there you
feeling
go.
very confident of stuff to come. So I appreciate, and also I appreciate it. Thank you, man, for having me on. It's always great
No.
talking football and everything else. So thank you, man. I really truly
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thanks a lot, guys. Chris Franklin, make sure you hold on. What was this? We got one final. Chris Franklin dropping a little Portuguese just to prove he's. See, look at that. Look, I don't just love you. My regular listeners love you. So we'll get you on
Thank you,
again right
guys.
before the season starts and everything. And have fun. I know you got a couple more days of chilling, and then the hard work really starts, not just for the players, but for you guys as well.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Both for both. This is rest of this days off, and also this training
Yeah.
camp. Is that itch is there. I'm missing football, like true football. And I can't wait to see
I
it.
don't want to talk about the home run derby anymore. I'm ready for football to start. Jam. Yeah. This
Oh,
show
we got
is so hard to do every day once football season ends.
wait
Because
till
I try
Wednesday.
to. What's that?
Wait till Wednesday, the day after the All-Star game.
I know.
Always the worst day. Always the worst day.
It's so awful. But anyway, Chris, thank you very much for coming on. I greatly appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your holiday, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
That was great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. That was Chris Franklin, NJ.com. Guys, make sure you follow him.